Welcome to the Iteration Point. I'm Michael Atkins. Today's conversation is about something a lot of us wrestle with. What happens when success stops feeling like success? When the career you've built over decades starts pulling you away from the work that actually matters to you? My guest today is Kim Hein-Beardsley, a licensed marriage and family therapist who spent 21 years in corporate healthcare. She had the title, the income, the respect, everything that's supposed to signal you've made it. But as she moved up the ladder into management, she more often found herself sitting in meetings instead of doing the work she loved, helping people. In this conversation, Kim talks about the moment she realized it was time to walk away. She shares what it was like to leave behind not just a paycheck, but an identity she'd built for 2 decades. And she talks honestly about the ego that made it harder to leave, the self-doubt that still shows up, and what it means to measure success differently now. This is a story about having the courage to start over when you're supposed to be settled. Let's get into it. All right. I am here with Kim. And Kim, I would love if you could start with a quick introduction to our audience, talk a little bit about your background, and set the stage a little bit for listeners of the Iteration Point.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I appreciate it. Well, my name is Kim Hein-Beardsley, and by past profession, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also a board certified coach and I'm a Reiki practitioner as well. And for a couple decades or so, I utilized my behavioral health background in a corporate health plan environment. I started off many years ago doing direct service. I was an outpatient therapist. I did in-home counseling. I worked with folks as a case manager with severe and persistent mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolar, helping them stay in the community. And then I didn't plan to move out of the direct service realm for that long. It was some life circumstances changed and I was relocating. And I had the opportunity to work for this health plan. They wanted somebody with a behavioral health background to be able to kind of speak the language of some of the metrics and the accreditation standards that health plans have to participate in. And I stayed for 21 years. And
Wow.
it was a long time. And it's amazing, though, how fast that can go by when you think about it as
Right?
well. And during that time, I was able to still use my background in mental health and emotional wellness and in coaching as well. I was able to offer coaching for our members. I did a lot of presentations to companies that had our insurance. They would ask us to do presentations. And because of my background, I did things on stress management, work-life balance, resilience, mental health awareness, suicide prevention, those kinds of things. And I really loved what I was doing. But back in 2022, I had the opportunity. They created a position for me and moved me into a management position where I was able to oversee a team of behavioral health case managers and care navigators who were helping the members of the health plan get connected to the behavioral health services that they needed. And I really felt great about that. It was something I'd been advocating for years. Really proud of the work my team was doing. I felt I was a servant leader. They were doing the tough work, the important work of actually talking to folks. But I really felt like I was there to be able to help smooth things out for them, support them in whatever way they needed, because they had to be in a good space to be able to be compassionate and engaged and fully present with the members that they were trying to assist. And that was great. And I felt really proud of that work, proud of what the team was doing and how they were helping folks. But I noticed over the past couple of years, as I moved further in my leadership path, it was pulling me further and further from the work that I really loved. I never had a strong ambition to try to advance my way up a corporate ladder or anything, not what I was going for. I was blessed that I was allowed to advance and encouraged and that they created that position for me. But I realized that what company was needing from me as a leader, as a manager, was much more operational, strategic, implementing new systems, accountability, KPIs, all that stuff. A lot of meetings all day, everyday meetings. And it was valuable. And I still felt proud of the work that our staff were doing, the team that we were
The
supporting.
outcomes you were
But it
achieving,
was
right?
pulling me further away from what I really enjoyed. And the more out of alignment I felt, the more it was starting to kind of take a toll on me. I could feel it mentally, physically, emotionally. Nobody was doing anything wrong. There wasn't anything negative. It just was pulling me further from my path, my purpose, my
The thing
expertise.
that really drove you to
Yeah.
get into this field in the first place.
Exactly, exactly. And while I got a taste of that in being able to support my team, support my staff, it was being really overshadowed by what what the corporate company needed from management. And so things kind of came to a head and evolved, and I realized I talked with my spouse, and fortunately he was completely supportive because he could see the toll it was taking, the level of stress, the level of just frustration and feeling misaligned with things that I'm like, I really need to move on. I think this chapter is now closed. All the wonderful things I got out of 21 years of being at a place, and I have a lot to be grateful for. I think it's time to move on. And so I did. I left in December with nothing solid lined up. And now I took time to figure out what's this next chapter going to be? I
Okay.
reviewed in my career what does light me up? When do I feel authentic? When do I feel like I'm in alignment with my purpose? How I can best be of service. And since then, the past few months, I've been creating my own business and getting in touch with those pieces that I feel like I'm really showing up as who I am and able to be of service in the best way that I can.
Right. Being your most authentic self, right?
Yes,
And doing the work
yes,
that you feel like you're
yeah,
capable and that brings the most value is that's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about that point
yeah.
where you realized that the change had to happen. Is
Hmm.
there a specific thing, or was it just kind of that feeling built up over time and accumulated, and then an opportunity presented itself, or what was that transition like?
It happened more quickly than I was expecting. I would say periodically over the years, as I imagine many people do, especially when there's a lot of change at places, you stop and you think, all right, is this still the best fit for me? Is this still what I'm looking to do? Am I still in the right place? And I'm pretty holistic. I believe you talk to my guides, you might want to call it your higher self, your intuition, your inner voice. And I would periodically do that. And the message I was always like, hang in there, wait and see, ride it out, and for years that was, the periodic every, 6 to 12 months when I would check in, that was always the message. And it was different this time. And I was feeling it. I was feeling like I'm not seeing, I'd been through I mean, anytime you've been in an organization that long, there's a lot of change that happens.
Sure.
And so I rode the waves for many years but I wasn't seeing a path where there could be a place for me to still feel more aligned. And so it wasn't something I took lightly and impulsively, but the decision that it needs to happen now came rather quickly. And I don't know. I mean, I think there was a few series of events, just dynamics in the teams that I was working with. I was just beginning to really notice how my philosophy or approach felt like it was getting further and further away from some of my co-leaders. I wasn't speaking the same language. I didn't have the same outlook. Neither was right or wrong. They were just different. And it didn't feel like I was, meshing with it as much anymore. And it was creating a lot of dissonance for me to feel like these interactions, these way things are going, it just wasn't feeling like a good fit anymore. But that dissonance was was kind of snowballing with how it was starting to affect me.
Yep.
Like I said, I was really feeling it mentally, emotionally, physically, and it kind of was coming to a head with things. But it was really scary. It was very hard to imagine after having invested a couple decades in a place to leave it. And
Right.
if I was honest with myself, and I've been honest lately, there was some ego tied up in that as well. It's like, okay, I was making a really good income and I had a nice title and I'd been there a long time and I had history and knowledge and all of that. And yet at the end of the day, I had to realize if I'm not happy, the title and the income and all of that doesn't mean anything. And that
Yes.
doesn't define me. It's not in alignment with who I am. But that was a little bit of a hard thing that I had to acknowledge for myself, that some of my resistance was coming from the ego as far as, oh my gosh, what's that going to mean? And my 17-year-old definitely felt the same thing. How could you walk away from that? And it's like, well, I'm like, you'll get it someday, buddy. That
Right.
at some point, all the money in the world and all the status, the position, the title, if it doesn't feel like who you are, all of
Yeah.
that's not gonna make you happy.
Yeah.
And so things did kinda come to a head. There were a few situations that really made it feel more uncomfortable for me. One of my staff summed it up really well. He told me after I gave my notice, he's like, "The universe had to make it so uncomfortable for you that you would leave your comfort zone." He's like, "You wanted to retire here. You'd been here 20 years. You wanted to coast through the next 15 years or whatever, and just ride it out in the safe, familiar space." He's like, it had to get that before, for me to actually take that leap. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. I'd weathered a lot of things. And I'm sure if somebody else would look at it, they could say, oh, well, that didn't seem like that was that bad. But how I
Mhm.
was feeling it in the moment internally, it's like, this is definitely time. And I kept hoping that maybe I could ride it out long enough to line something else up or whatnot, but some
Right.
circumstances happened, and I ended up just telling my husband, I'm like, I literally was texting him. I'm like, it has to be today. I have to give my notice today.
Wow.
I'm like,
Wow.
I just came out of a meeting, such and such happened. I felt really not in alignment. And I said,
Mhm.
I can't keep doing this. And I said, and I don't feel another way around it. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
actually ironically the day of my review. And so I had just gotten done having a very nice review and then had
Sure.
to tell the VP, thank you for everything nice that you just said. But,
And
and I'm giving my 3-week notice is what they wanted managers to give. So
yeah, yeah,
I'm
sure.
like, this is what I need. I'm like, I don't have anything lined up, but I need the space to do the soul searching and figure out
Right.
what do I want? Look at my career and at doing what pieces, when did I feel the most authentic? How do I get that sensation back? What am I going to do? And I wasn't sure if I was going to be building something on my own or if I was going to find another position that felt that way, but I knew I didn't want to jump into the same thing. I told my
Right.
spouse, I said, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to leave someplace I've been at for 20 years and put all this time and energy in, I said, this next step better be transformational. I said, it can't be panicking and taking another position that I'm going to feel just as stressed out in. I'm like, that doesn't serve me. If I'm going to be stressed out, I might as well be stressed out in a place that's familiar. And at least I know what the stress is.
Right.
I'm like, this needs to be something that my next step really is meaningful and feels fully in who I am, feels authentic to me, whether that's me creating my own business, which I've started doing, or whether it's finding something else. But I'm like, I didn't want my fear to force me into something that was going to feel just as bad or just as stressful.
Yeah. Fear-based decision making, as we
Yeah.
know, leads to all sorts of negative outcomes for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So as you've been starting your business and you gave
Yeah.
yourself that time to step away and
Mhm.
kind of collect yourself, right?
Mhm.
What led you to the decision that you wanted to start that business for yourself as opposed to finding a role in an organization at a place where you were having that direct contact with folks?
Well, I had started a business before. I'd had an LLC before, just on the side. It was a Reiki practice. And I just closed that about a year and a half before. So I had some familiarity with starting a business and what that would look like. And I had such a lack of autonomy for quite some time that I really wanted to have more say in what I was creating. So I wanted to give it a whirl and try to build something on my own. And when I was talking with folks about what I wanted to be able to offer, I wanted to get back into the coaching folks in more of a life coaching, well-being space. I wanted to find out about being able to, can I support companies again with their wellness offerings, with trainings, with presentations and workshops, weave in some of my holistic things like meditation or Reiki if it's interested. I didn't want to compartmentalize myself. I wanted
Uh-huh.
to be able to say, this is all I can offer all of this. It's really then what people are gravitating towards. So I'm not forcing my holistic thoughts on folks, but it's there if they're interested. But I really spent some time thinking about, what were those pieces that really lit me up? I did look at positions online, checked out Indeed and all the other
Yep.
job postings, and I wasn't finding the fit that I was looking for. There's definitely other coaching things out there. It's very health coaching based. They want specific certifications, very much in the you're going to be supporting folks with these conditions. And while I've had some experience in that, that's not the coaching that I really wanted. I didn't want to specifically, target folks who are maybe struggling with a certain health diagnosis. It's more just where are you at? Where do you want to be? How can I help you get there kind of thing, and share some tools and strategies that way. And so I felt comfortable trying to build something and see because when I was doing the work before on behalf of the health plan, when I was going in and talking to employers and I was doing coaches, I often got the sense in conversations with folks that they really felt like there was a value and a need. But even that work, that had really been scaled back within our organization a lot in the last few years.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if it's just kind of where the industry went, or if it was just, where the company had to put their resources,
Mhm.
where they were going to get their most bang for their buck. But because I don't know how much ROI you always get for some of this, it's more the
Hard to measure.
it is very hard to measure. It's
Yeah.
really the individual's perception of the value. It's hard to, concretely move the dial on something. It's really, are they feeling like this is, beneficial? Do they feel like they've had some insights and awarenesses and they've made shifts in their lives, or they walked away from that presentation saying, yeah, I really needed to hear that today. Yep, that really resonated with me. But that is hard to measure. And so it can be hard to justify, paying a lot for staff to do, fill those needs if it doesn't have some sort of concrete, dollars tied to it or whatnot. But I
Uh-huh.
remember just the conversations that I would have where the organizations, the HR staff were like, we need this information. And so I wanted to see, I wanted to be able to try to build something based off of my, couple decades of experience, to be able to say, yeah, I want to be able to offer this again. And I had to remind myself that I do have a few decades of experience, that I'm not a newbie in this space. I think it's very different to have to sell yourself and promote yourself and your expertise when it's you doing it on your own, as opposed to I'm doing it on behalf of a company and this is my paid position or whatever. I had to remind myself I do have some knowledge and experience,
Yeah.
and to kind of trust that I have something valuable and worthwhile to offer. And so I shared it with a few people to kind of get their
Mhm.
reactions on, hey, I'm thinking about building this. This is what I'd like to do. This is what I used to love doing in the past. I'd like to see if I can recreate something like this on my own. And I kept getting a very positive response. So like, yes, we need something like this, especially people in their companies. They're like, yeah, well, we don't see enough anymore. Maybe there's, an intranet article for, oh, hey, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and here's a resource. And that's about all that's shared. They're like, we
Right.
want more. Yep, we've got an EAP, an employee assistance program. That's fantastic. And yet they're like, but we want more. We want it more front and center. We want to be reminded that our emotional well-being is just as important to how we show up in our jobs as every other aspect. And so a lot of people want to feel like their company supports them as a whole person and really cares about them. And so some places are like, they appreciate it when their employer is sharing these kind of resources and recognizing that these sorts of skills and training in this area matters as well, just as much as your technical skills training or things for your position. It's like it helps them to feel like their company cares about them. They're more than a line item,
Mhm.
because these topics are being talked about, they're being acknowledged, they're being encouraged for people to take advantage of. So I got some good feedback from folks that they felt like this would be valuable, not just me thinking it'd be valuable, but
Fantastic. Yep.
yeah,
No, that's
yeah.
great. Yeah. So, in getting that feedback, were you talking to friends, family, previous people you'd worked with, kind of a range across the board?
Yeah, yes, absolutely a range. I have a couple neighbors slash friends who work for some big corporations in our area here. And yeah, ran the idea by them and they were very excited and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds fabulous." And that is so you. That is so who you are. That's perfect
Right.
for what we know about you. Um, I was surprisingly, I was a little hesitant to let all of my family know. I'm not
Yeah.
close family
Okay.
members know, but I was a little nervous at first to let everybody know that I had walked away from my job because I didn't
Right.
know if they were going to be like, "What the heck were you thinking?
Who
How
does
could
that,
you do that?"
right?
Right? Who does that? That is foolish, impulsive. We weren't planning on being a one income family or anything like that. That's not what we were anticipating with a senior going into college next year. But honestly, I was very pleasantly surprised that when
Okay.
I did share it, I had a ton of support and folks were like, that was very courageous. They're like, I wish I had the courage to go after what I want. I wish more people felt like they had permission to do that. And so I felt like I got a lot of great support, which really helped. But I was very nervous in the beginning because I thought they were going to just tell me it was the most foolish thing they've ever done and
Okay.
or that I've ever done. And I was already periodically having those thoughts myself. And so,
Yes.
which
It's
I had.
self-doubt, right?
Yes, absolutely. I call this my, faith over fear moment and I still have those moments, where
Mhm.
it's like felt very called and guided to do this and to launch this and be on this path and to start a new chapter. But, there's definitely those times when my human brain takes over and has those freak out moments of, oh my gosh, what did you just do? I mean, I had one. I needed a pep talk a few days ago because we just got done doing our taxes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
seeing what I made on my W-2 last year, and I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, How did I?" And I just walked away. How could I? And yet I had to remind myself that but it needed to happen, and a dollar amount does not define me, and I am building a new
Okay.
business. I also have to give myself a lot of grace that I am building something, and I can't unrealistically expect to hit the same dollar amount at a certain time. It's like I can't measure my success by, well, I have to replace exactly what I was making. That's not realistic and it puts undue pressure. And so I've had to even, kind of reevaluate or check in with myself on what's realistic as far as it's not, oh, I have to make the exact same amount per month. It's no,
Mhm.
my success is going to be measured in the number of clients that I book and when I get to do things and I'm feeling good that way, but I can't compare it. But that was another kind of gut check moment was I did have that kind of freak out, oh my God, what did I do moment? And then I have
Yeah.
to pause and ground and
Right.
remind myself it's okay. It's okay.
And because you left a place because it wasn't fulfilling you, are you feeling that fulfillment through the new work
Mhm.
that you're doing? That's
Mhm.
a measure of success that sounds like would be incredibly important.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I can tell when you know, I can feel myself light up more again when I think about the work that I'm doing now and feeling like I am my authentic self. Like, yes, I am making a difference. I am being true to my values and what I have to bring. My mantra is I have much to offer this world. I say that all the time. I have much to offer this world and I want to be of service. I did not leave because I didn't feel like working. I wasn't just going to kind of sit around and binge watch shows all day. It's
Right.
like I wanted to be able to get back in touch with, you know, where do I feel I can be most impactful for folks and how I can help folks. And so you're right. It really is. My measure is, am I feeling good about where I'm at? Do I feel like this does feel like me? And the money is secondary, it all comes back to, am I making a difference in that one-on-one coaching session? Or when I have that presentation and somebody comes up to me and tells me, that was so spot on for today. I needed to hear that today. It resonated. That's what's meaningful. And everything else will just kind of, fall in line. But
Yeah.
um, it's definitely it's a leap of faith in many respects, though.
It sounds like you're absolutely, on the right path for yourself. It's very exciting. It resonates with me hearing you talk about this, and I
Mhm.
hope it does for our listeners as well. What's exciting you about what's coming up next?
Yeah, well, I'm continuing to connect and build what I've crafted as well. I've also been in touch with a local wellness center who is interested in having me come on to do coaching for them as an independent contractor, which would be a nice addition or supplement or complement to the business that I'm building. I feel like there's a chance to really kind of have my more employer facing work within that space and how I can support employers and then in turn their staff and support them with coaching, but then also more the community members and be able to do that on the side as well. And I'm excited just to be able to step into this identity within my community, within the business space. I'm learning a lot about marketing, joining Chamber of Commerce's, things like that.
Right.
And just being like, this is me. This is my new work. This is who I am. One thing that I found really helpful, it seems like a small shift, but it was a mind shift, is I very quickly had to remind myself, I am self-employed. I am not unemployed. And because it's just whether, especially in the beginning, whether I had any paying clients or not, I had a
Hmm.
business built and I was growing it and doing all of the networking and marketing and all of that you need to do. But even just being able to step into the space as if I was already successful with what I was doing and saying, no, I'm self-employed. I'm not going to say I'm unemployed. I'm not going to put that anywhere, even though for a while it felt like that. But it's just a little mind shift that has helped me stay true to my path and continue to feel positive, and it helps kind of ground me whenever those doubts kind of come up a little bit. So.
Fantastic. So, would be the best way for people to reach you for these new services that you're offering?
Yes, absolutely. My company is called Path to Ascended Wellness and Coaching. It's a mouthful. But the website is Path to Ascended Wellness Coaching. And my email is Kimberly at Path to Ascended Wellness Coaching. And I also have an Instagram and I have a Facebook page and my business names as well. And so folks can definitely come and check out my website. It has a lot about my offerings. I'm slowly adding a few things out. I have a YouTube channel as well. Right now I have a handful of guided meditations out on my YouTube channel. That's something I used to do regularly and I wanted to be able to offer that again. So they're brief meditations, but I thought it might be helpful for folks to be able to hear me, hear my voice, get a sense of who I am just by being able to listen. Sometimes it takes that before somebody is willing to reach out for coaching or Reiki or even a presentation if they feel like they can connect with me a little bit more personally by hearing my voice and hearing what I have to share in the meditations. And so I'm out there in those spaces. And yeah, I would welcome if anybody has any questions, they can certainly reach out to me and come explore my website and contact me that way as well.
We'll put some links to your resources in with the
Okay,
podcast.
that
And,
sounds great.
we just really wanted to thank you for being on today. I
Mhm.
got a lot out of this, and I hope our listeners did too.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
What an inspiring story. Kim left a 21-year career, and now she's building Path to Ascended Wellness and Coaching, offering services on stress management, resilience, and mental wellness. I highly recommend visiting her site, pathtoascendedwellnesscoaching.com, or find her on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, where she shares guided meditations. One thing that stuck with me from this conversation was Kim's reminder that she's self employed, not unemployed. It's a small shift in language, but it's a big shift in mindset. When you're building something new, the way you talk about it, even to yourself, matters. If you're in a place where something needs to change, or you're wondering if you have the courage to make that leap, I hope Kim's story gave you something to think about. I hope you'll take a moment to share this podcast right now with someone that needs to hear it. Thanks for listening to The Iteration Point. New episodes drop every Tuesday. If this resonated with you, hit follow so you don't miss the next conversation. And if you have a story about a pivot point in your career, I'd love to hear from you. Visit theiterationpoint.com to get in touch. I'm Michael Atkins. Talk to you next time.